I received a message from a Catholic telling me that an idol is something that you choose to worship as God. Therefore, they are not an idol worshiper. Okay? An idol is something that you place between you and God. Inherently, if you placed something between you and God, what happens is you've placed that thing as more important than God. So, two things need to be understood here. The first is that you can claim to worship God, but you can also place other things before Him. So that the actual truth is that you are not worshiping God, but you're worshiping that thing that you've placed before Him. This is why He says, don't be double-minded. He needs to be everything or nothing. So you can claim to worship God, but you can also have set up other idols in your life that you hold as more important to God, and therefore you have only deceived yourself. You are just in delusion that you actually worship Him. You're worshiping the things that you've placed before Him. The other issue is that Jesus is our only intercessor to God. And so if you believe that Mary or some fabrication of Mary is who you need to pray to, that's who you're worshiping. You believe that you need to go to saints who have died, by the way, and the word strictly prohibits you from speaking to the dead, calling on the dead. So now you're praying to something that's not God, you're calling on the dead, and you don't regard the word, which says that Jesus is your only intercessor to the Father, and Jesus Himself is God, and Jesus Himself taught you to pray directly to the Father. So yes, this is idol worship. I'm not going to call it anything else. That's what it is. The word specifically describes these idols too, made out of stone, made out of wood, and yet Catholics set up these statues and little relics and figurines, and right now they're flocking to some relic that claims to have bones of Jude in it. What is that? That's demonic. That's pagan. Praying to it, wanting to touch it, bowing to it. This is ridiculous. And now also, I'm accused of bearing false witness because I'm saying that that's idol worship, and bearing false witness is a sin. How ironic and lame. I'm not bearing false witness, but it's kind of weird for an idol worshiper to call me up on my sin of bearing false witness against them. It's just weird. And it's a way of trying to bully me into being quiet, which never works with me. God says, rid yourselves of idols. John, by the way, was telling early Christians this. Early Christians were Jews, guys. They had known for many years that they were not supposed to be worshiping idols, setting up statues, doing these things, which an idol doesn't have to be a statue, by the way. The only reason I mention that is because it's kind of strange for a Catholic who does bow down to idols and kiss statues and things like that. It's a little strange for them to be saying something like this, like defending themselves against idolatry. But John was telling early Christians who were Jews, who were not in the habit of setting up statues and figurines, keep your heart free from idols. So there was an understanding in the Bible that an idol could be more than just a statue. And also, the commandments talk about these things, talk about setting up images and bowing down to them. Catholics wouldn't understand that because they removed that from the commandments. But if you are setting up pictures, nativity scenes, little statues, big statues, crosses, paintings of so-called Jesus, these are all idols. They're images. Now you can also have idols of things that you value more than God, that you place between you and God. Food can be an idol. Technology can be an idol. Relationships can be an idol. This is not new, is it really, guys? You can make a human being an idol and never bow down to them once, at least not physically. But if that's what you place before God, you've made that to be an idol. And this is why it's so important for us to fast on a regular basis, because a lot of us don't even realize how many idols we have in our lives. And fasting shows us. So if you sit down and you write a list of the things that you've been placing before God. Recently, we had someone who could not obey the most basic thing, which is to keep the Sabbath holy. They're too afraid of the world and too afraid of man to hold themselves accountable to not work on the Sabbath. So what's the idol, guys? Because you're bowing down to something else if you're not able to keep the most basic command. Fear of the world, fear of man, needing to be part of the world. Only God knows. And the only way you're going to find out what's in your heart is if you go to him and lay it bare. It's already laid bare before him, but you need to go to him and ask him what's in your heart, what needs to get cleaned out, and then you need to receive it. An idol is nothing. It's never been anything. There are no false gods. There are no gods other than God. They're just false gods, but even false gods are nothing. They don't have any power. The only power they've ever had is what you're giving them. If you place God first, you go to him, you receive what it is that he's doing in your life, nothing's going to be able to harm you. And if God commands it, he will make a way for you to obey. You don't need to be afraid of man, and you don't need to be afraid of this world. He's already told you that. He's already told you that there are certain things that you're going to suffer, and that you need not be afraid of those who can kill the body, but the one who kills both body and soul in hell. What God requires, not what he asks for, not your extra credit, not what he suggests. What he requires is single-mindedness. You cannot be double-mindedness. If you are double-minded, friendship with the world is enmity to God. You have made yourself an enemy of God. Please discern this message with God.